This past winter, something went terribly wrong in the Alps. We saw a shocking number of fatal avalanches, creating a genuine crisis. But, this wasn't just some random act of nature. It was a perfect storm of factors. And we're going to break down exactly how everything, from microscopic snow crystals to human psychology, came together to create a season of truly unprecedented danger.
So, get this. By the middle of February 2026, more than 99 people had already died in avalanches across Europe. That's a staggering figure. It tells a story of a winter tourism season and, frankly, a safety system that was pushed to its absolute breaking point.
And to really put that number into perspective for you, the Alps hit the death toll for an entire year before spring had even begun. There were still 2 full months of the high season left to go. That was the moment everyone knew this was no ordinary winter.
So the big question is, how did this happen? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was this catastrophic chain reaction. So let's dive in and explore the anatomy of this perfect storm, layer by layer, from the fragile snowpack itself to the psychology of the people who were out there skiing on it.
Okay, first things first. The story really begins deep inside the snowpack. It starts with a fatal flaw that experts were literally describing as a house of cards.
At the heart of the problem is something called a persistent weak layer, or PWL for short. Now think of this like a hidden trap. It's a fragile, sugary layer of rotten ice crystals buried deep in the snow. It has zero strength, and this season, this exact layer was the prime suspect in avalanche reports from France all the way to Austria. So how did this trap even get set? Well, it was a simple but absolutely deadly 3-step process. First, you get some early, thin snow. Then, big temperature swings between the warm ground and cold air transform those bottom crystals into that weak, sugary stuff called death hoar. Then, bam! Massive storms come in and pile heavy, dense slabs of new snow right on top. What you're left with is basically a mountain-sized minefield.
And this quote from expert Henry Schneewend just captures the terrifying nature of this problem perfectly. Because that weak layer is completely hidden, it creates this powerful, false sense of security. A slope can look and feel totally stable. Then one unlucky person finds the exact trigger point, and the entire mountainside just fails catastrophically.
All right, so we've got this incredibly fragile foundation. The next ingredient in this disaster was some truly extreme and, paradoxical weather, all of it amplified by our changing climates.
The weather this season was defined by this bizarre paradox. Down in the valleys, there was a snow drought. We're talking nearly 200 resorts in France alone had to stay closed. But, and this is the wild part, you go up above 2,000 meters, and the high peaks were just getting hammered. Why? Well, a warmer atmosphere simply holds more moisture, which leads to more intense and dangerous snowfall at high altitudes. Now, this volatility was supercharged by a really rare combination of global weather patterns. Look, you don't need to be a meteorologist to know all these names like La Niña or NAO. What's important is that together, they created this destructive cycle. Violent storms would dump tons of heavy snow, and then they'd be followed by these cold, clear spells. It was the absolute perfect recipe for making that buried weak layer even weaker and a whole lot more dangerous. And here's a crucial point. Global warming isn't just about melting snow. It's changing its very nature at high altitudes. We're seeing more rain-on-snow events, and that's creating wet avalanches. And these things, they are way denser. They can exert enough force to just crush buildings that a normal dry powder slide might just flow around. So you have a mountain that's essentially loaded like a weapon. The final and most tragic ingredient was the human trigger.
The data on this is just overwhelming. In about 90% of fatal avalanche accidents, the victims themselves or someone in their group is the one who triggers the slide. It's a really difficult fact, but it's absolutely essential to understanding this crisis.
Which brings us to the central, really tough question. When the official warnings are at level 3, which is considerable, or even level 4, high, why do people still choose to go into uncontrolled terrain?
Experts point to this powerful cocktail of psychological factors they often call powder fever. You get this beautiful bluebird sky after a big storm, and it creates this dangerous illusion of safety. People feel secure in the side country, that easily accessible terrain right off the main ski runs that isn't controlled. And when you combine that with overconfidence in your gear or your skills, it leads people to tragically underestimate the real risk.
So, when all these factors combine and disaster strikes, this army of professionals is called into action. But the cost of their bravery is pushing the whole public safety system to a breaking point.
11,000 euros. That is the average cost of a single mountain rescue intervention in France. And that number is just skyrocketing. The cost of helicopters alone has jumped 141% in the last decade. It's becoming incredibly expensive.
And this cost has kicked off a really fierce debate, especially in France, because they're kind of an outlier in Europe. See, in neighboring countries like Switzerland and Italy, the individual who gets rescued or their insurance pays the bill. But in France, mountain rescue is largely a free, taxpayer-funded public service. And with both costs and accidents on the rise, officials are asking a very tough question. Is that model even sustainable anymore?
This has now become a major policy question right across the Alps. I mean, France's own Court of Auditors has officially proposed reevaluating the whole free rescue model. It sparked this huge conversation about who should be financially responsible when things go wrong in the mountains.
So, after all of that, what do we take away from this perfect storm of events? What has this tragic season really taught us?
The tragedy of the 2026 season really wasn't caused by one single thing. It was this deadly convergence of these four powerful factors. You had a weak foundation in the snow, amplified by climate volatility, which was then set off by human triggers. And all of that has led to this major consequence for public safety systems.
Which leaves us with one final and pretty unsettling question. Was this catastrophic winter just a freak anomaly? Or, in a world that's being fundamentally reshaped by a changing climate, is this terrifying season not an exception, but actually a preview of our new normal?